I'm going to show you guys how to factor by grouping and then set each factor equal to 0 in order to solve a cubic function that has 4 terms. Of course, our calculator strategy is that you can take the equation, put that in your graphing calculator. I'm going to use DESMOS, and we are going to look for the x-intercepts, where the graph crosses the x-axis. Then we're going to take the x value of the coordinate, which is going to be the first number right here, and that is going to be the answer, or the answers if the graph crosses the x-axis more than once. Let's take a look at our first example. So the first thing we want to do is we want to group the first 2 terms and the last 2 terms. And then we are going to focus on the first set of terms here. We're going to do greatest common factor. What's the biggest number that goes into 1? Because there's a hidden 1 here, and 6. Well, the biggest number for that is just going to be a 1. We don't factor out 1s. But the rule for the exponents is you look for the smallest number of exponents here. This is 3, and this is 2. So the only thing I can factor out is x squared. We open a set of parentheses. Then we have to figure out x squared times what would get us back to x to the third. That would just simply be x. Because when you multiply with letters, you are adding the exponents, because 2 plus 1, that would get us to 3. So we're going to hide this 1, and now we're going to say x squared times what is 6x squared. That's just plus 6. So once you get your first set of parentheses, we're going to use it over here. I call this the match. So we're going to use x plus 6 for the second set of terms that we have here. So let's simply ask ourselves, what can we put on the outside right here that we multiply times x on the inside, and that would get us to negative 25x? That would be negative 25. All right, and then what we do now is we are going to take and we're going to group the outside terms. We have x squared minus 25. And then we say x plus 6, which is the match. And we're setting everything equal to 0 right here. Now what we want to do is, if you look at your steps, it says set each factor equal to 0 and solve for x right here. That's what we'll do. We're going to split these factors up. So we'll say x squared minus 25 equals 0. X plus 6 equals 0. So we want to get x by itself. The opposite of minus 25 is we're going to add 25 to the other side. And then the opposite of squaring, so the opposite of to the second power, is to take the square root. But when you take the square root, you have to do the plus or minus sign. And then what is the square root of 25? Well, the square root of 25 is 5. So we have 2 answers right here. So this is the same as saying x equals 5 and x equals negative 5. So when you take the square root, use the plus or minus sign. That's telling you that you're going to have 2 answers at the very end. Now we need to solve this x plus 6 equals 0. Just do the opposite of plus 6. Well, that's easy. It's minus 6. And so this cubic function has 3 answers. It has 5, negative 5, and negative 6. Let's see what that looks like in DESMOS here. Let's see if we have x-intercepts at 5, negative 5, and negative 6. So you simply type your equation in. And so we have 5, right? We're looking for the x value of the coordinate, negative 5, and negative 6. So when you're typing your answers in or you're writing your answers down, don't write them as coordinates, only write down the x value of the coordinates. Let's look at another example here. Let's look at, we're going to do example 2 down here at the bottom. We're going to say, let's do 18x to the third minus 9x squared minus 8x plus 4 equals 0. Okay, so the first thing we want to do is group our terms. So the first 2 terms and the second 2 terms get grouped with parentheses. We are going to factor out the greatest common factor. So what's the biggest number that goes into 18 and 9? That is 9. We look for the lowest number of exponents, which is x squared, that goes on the outside. Now let's reverse the problem. Let's say 9x squared times what is 18x to the third? That would be 2x. Because 9 times 2 is 18. X squared times x, you add the exponents, you get x to the third. Now we say 9x squared times what is negative 9x squared? That's the negative 1 rule, so we just say times negative 1. We take our parentheses, we're calling that the match because we're going to use that. So I'll say that's the match. That's what we use for the second set of terms. So we're looking right here, right? Now all you have to do is say, what can I put on the outside as a multiplier that I multiply 2x by, but it gives me negative 8x? Well, that would be negative 4. So now we're ready to group. The outside terms are going to go together. So we say 9x squared minus 4, and then the match consolidates. And now we're ready to set these equal to 0 here. So let's set these equal to 0. So we have 9x squared minus 4 equals 0, and 2x minus 1 equals 0. Let's start with the 1 right here on the left. We're going to add 4 to the other side. And then we have to get x squared by itself, so we're going to divide by 9. It's okay, we're going to get a fraction. And then what we want to do is we want to do the opposite of squaring. The opposite of squaring is take the square root. So we have to take the square root here. So I go take the square root, that cancels. And remember, when you take the square root, it's plus or minus. Well, guess what? The square root of 4 is 2, and the square root of 9 is 3. So I have two fractions right here. That is the same as saying x equals 2/3 and x equals negative 2/3. And then let's solve this one here. We want to get x by itself. We're going to add 1 to the other side. And then divide by 2. And this one is only going to have one answer, which is just 1/2. So now we have 3 answers: 2/3, negative 2/3, and 1/2. Let's look at Desmos here, see what that looks like here. So you're going to have to do some zooming in right here. Let's kind of open this up. So you see a decimal, negative 0.6667. That means that it is repeating. So we're going to say negative 0.66666666. Keep going. You see right there where the 3 box right there is right there in blue. If I keep going 6666, when the fraction part opens up or pops back up, then you can say, oh, there's negative 2/3. So when you're typing this in, depending on the program you're using, you need to type it in as a fraction, right? 0.5, that's not repeating. 0.5, we can just convert that to a fraction, 1/2. And then, of course, this is positive 0.66 repeating, so 0.666, keep going. The fraction goes away, and then it comes back, and you can see it's positive 2/3. So 2 options here. You have the paper method, you have the graphing method.